timeline.
Did they have this problem with free will on other planetary systems or just this one?
This one is very, very special. Some of the other planets, see, I've had people go to lifetimes when they were on these other planets. There are some planets that have no free will, and it's horrible. And other planets have a different kind of lesson, and it's not as hard as ours. They said Earth is a very challenging planet. They're really afraid of us. They're afraid of our violence. They said this is a young planet that's been isolated over here in this part of the galaxy on purpose. They don't want us to contaminate the rest of the developing species because of our violence.
Are they puzzled by the violence, Dolores?
They don't understand it. They said, how can you kill each other? That's because life is so sacred. They can't understand that, but they can only observe. So they've been watching us all of this time, monitoring, just to see, because there are records that are being kept in the histories of each planet has a history, and this is in the councils. And when a planet reaches a point it can have life, that's a very important point in the history of that planet, and that's when they're given their life charter. So they keep records of everything that is happening to the whole planet.
I'm beginning to see a picture here of why they started showing up again 50 years ago.
And some of the people who they talked about having these implants up in their nostrils, that is because they are recording everything that is being heard and everything that is being seen, and it all goes into the computers and the history books on their channel, on their the home council. Okay, so anyway, they've been monitoring us and watching us and shaking their heads at these little kids. What are they doing now? And we were given, the different inventions as it was time for us to have it. What caught their attention was the explosion of the atomic bomb in 1995.
Which they didn't give us, right?
No, they said, we did not give them that information. They were not supposed to have it. It was too powerful. The human race was not ready for it. And it really got their attention because they said they won't know what to do with it. And it could blow up the world. Now, that's the exception I mentioned earlier. Only if we get to the point where we could destroy the world would they have to step in. Because if the world was destroyed, it would send reverberations out through space, and it would interfere with other planets, other galaxies, other dimensions, and it could never be allowed to happen.
Is that why we hear stories of craft being above atomic weapons arsenal sites and they're dismantled, for example?
Oh, well, they are monitoring all of that, and I know, Bob Dean.
Yeah.
He's a good friend of mine. He has talked about where he's heard the stories where they have appeared to different government leaders, right, when they were making these atomic plans to keep them from moving forward. And I believe Bob, he has a lot of information.
Would they ever destroy us, Dolores, in order to stop us? Now, like you said in the beginning, they said, let's let it evolve, let's let it happen. They had a chance to wipe us out. Would they do it this time?
No, because they said life is too special. This is part of the collection of sperms and ova. They're stored. In case the human race were to destroy itself, they could reproduce us. And there's another planet out there, they said, that we could move us to if we had to be. And we could develop on that planet all over again from scratch. But it's a planet that is a little different than Earth, but it has the same chemical composition in the gases in the air. But this is just in case, and they don't want us to go that far.
The alien abduction phenomenon that we hear so much about, are they part of that?
Definitely, but it has a definite reason. Okay, you can...
Go ahead.
Sorry, I'm talking over you. I don't mean to. Like I said, when the atomic bomb was dropped, that really got their attention, and they had to come down here, see what these kids are up to. What are they playing around with? And you remember at the end of the 1940s and the beginning of the 1950s, is when they began the rash of the first UFO sightings.
That's right.
That's when it all began, because they had to come and see what was going on.
As a matter of fact, 1947, Kenneth Arnold, 1947, Roswell.
Yes.
It all started, but just a year or two after the atomic bomb.
Before that, you only heard of a few things, just isolated stories and things before that. It all began with the atomic bomb, because they had to find out what we were up to, and was very important, not just for Earth, but for the galaxies and everything. So when they found out what we were doing, they became very concerned, because they said, these kids can't even handle their own affairs. Look at the war they just came through. Look at the things they're doing to each other, the violence. They can't even handle that. They'll never be able to handle an atomic power. So they were very concerned, what are we going to do to ourselves? So they went back to the council. I said, couldn't you just come in and say, stop it with the atomic power? They said, that's interference, and they are bound by that. So they came up with what I think is a brilliant plan that I don't think anyone else would have ever come up with but the ones who created us. Do we have time to tell it right now, or do you want to?
We're coming up on a break in a minute, and I'm sure this is going to be a big part.
I think it'd be a good holding point. But they went back to the council and discussed this. They said, all right, we cannot interfere from the outside. What if we do it a different way from the inside?
I wonder who concocted that idea.
The ones in the council. So this is what will bring me up to the three waves of volunteers.
Okay, we'll talk about these three waves when we come back, Dolores. And Dolores, of course, also has been just an expert with Nostradamus and her past life work as well. We'll get into that a little bit later on Coast to Coast AM. Her website is ozarkmt.com, ozarkmt.com. And if you need to email me, that's George at coasttocoastam.com as well. So we'll be right back in just a moment. Fast Hour, Dolores Cannon, next on Coast to Coast AM.